Sometimes car dealers do have good advice. Most people don't like car dealers. I'm a car dealer. I've been in the business a long time, but I do classic cars, hot rods, specialty cars, some exotics, but not your mainstream day-to-day late model used cars. I just don't, that's not what I do. I used to be in California, out in Phoenix now, and we had a big dealership in California. We used to have about 200 cars in stock. At the time, I was probably one of the biggest classic car dealers on the West Coast back '08 till about 2013. So I have a customer come in, nice guy, super nice guy, but a real nervous wreck. He's a kind of a car guy. He's into hot rods, and he had some older hot rods, but then he had a bunch of late model performance cars. He had a final edition 35th anniversary SS Camaro, an SLP car, 21 miles on it, in the wrapper in the plastic. So he had these 6 cars. This Camaro, he had a 1LE Camaro in 1990, 28 miles on it, '03 Mustang, Mach 1, yellow, shaker hood. And the yellow is kind of rare in those cars. Low mile car, 6-liter, 6-speed SSR, last year car. He knew the cars to buy in the late model performance cars. Pace car Corvette, 1998, that flamboyant purple with the yellow. You either love it or hate it. You can never learn to love it. It's one of those cars. So we were going to buy him. We were going to consign him. We didn't know what we wanted to do. So after about going back and forth with him, because he was a bit of a nervous Nelly, because he's never done this before, he wanted to auction them off. So I said, okay, if we're going to auction them, I said, we'll get the cars here. I said, let's consign them. We got all the auctions coming up in Scottsdale in a couple of months. I said, let's take them to Barrett-Jackson. I said, we'll sell them as a collection. They'll sell, 1 or 2 at a time during the course of the week. And he's like, all right, well, what do you think I can get for them? He goes, how much money? I said, they're basically brand new. I didn't got to go look at them. You're just going to bring them to the shop. I said, but I'll give you a ballpark. So I said, you're probably going to net somewhere. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give you some good advice. I said, you got probably 200 grand worth of cars at the end of the day. I said, I think they're going to do an average of, 6 cars. They're going to do an average of 30, 35 a car, depending on the cars. So the Corvette and the SSR will do a little bit more. The SSR, 6-liter, 6-speed, and it's yellow. I said, there's not a lot of them out there, and they're kind of hot right now. I got to realize this is 2009, 10 era. He's like, okay, done. Leaves. I'm like, oh, good. We got a good deal going on here, right? He comes back a couple days later. We set up a time, get the cars over to my dealerships, stick them in a showroom, put them in a building. We have a storage facility. And this guy, I realized, as much of a car guy he is, he's really kind of a anal nut. He brings in boxes of stuff. And I'm like, Carl, what's all this stuff? He goes, oh, here's the original battery for this car. It's marked. Here's the original oil filter from the first oil change. He had all this stuff bagged for the car. I was like, great. I said, okay, good provenance, keep it with the car. And then, of course, he had the window stickers and build sheets and anything that went with the cars. Once a week, he'd come and visit the cars. Now, realize we got the cars around September, October. We weren't going to Scottsdale until January. So he'd come and visit the cars once a week, just come in and say hello. Nice guy. He'd bring me coffee. Sometimes we'd have lunch. Kind of November rolls around into December. He's starting to come in more and more. I can see he's getting a little nervous and antsy. Now, I got the cars consigned. They're photographed. They're cataloged. They're in some of the preview stuff for the upcoming auction. I got the titles for the cars. We got a consignment agreement written up. And he's starting to get a little nervous and antsy. And I'm like, Carl, I said, we're good. I said, you're going to see this money. This is what the cars are going to bring. I said, relax. And he's getting nervous. And I gave him some good advice. And he's like, all right, Joe, And he'd settle down and he'd leave. He'd come in a couple days later and he'd be all antsy again. And I don't mean it disrespect. The guy was the nicest guy in the world. He was just kind of what you call a nervous Nelly. It wasn't his forte of, playing in the car game and going to car auctions and stuff like that. He settled down and he'd come in and we'd talk and I'd have to reassure him and give him good advice and settle him down again. January comes around. Everything ships to Scottsdale. I got 40-something cars going to the auction, all right? And his collection of 6 are in there. And he's on the phone with me while I'm in Scottsdale, days before the auction going, and we're talking this and that. I didn't quite leave for the auction yet. The car's already left. I was still in the office. He comes walking in the day I'm supposed to leave to go to Scottsdale from California. And he goes, I don't know what I want to do. He goes, maybe I don't want to. I said, no, there's no option. We're not pulling the cars. They're not coming out. They're gone. It said they're already on a transport on their way to Phoenix. We're in California. It said it's done. It said they got to sell. Would you buy the cars from me? And if I could just walk away, I can't take the stress. I'm like, listen, I said, you're going to do pretty well. But if I got to write a check, it's got to be on my terms. I said, because now I'm taking all the risk. And he goes, okay. He goes, what do you give me? I said, here's how we're going to do it. I pulled the checkbook out of my desk. I opened it up. I said, I'm going to write you a check for this number. I'm going to hand you the check. You either look at it, fold it in half and put it in your pocket. We shake hands, or just hand me the check back and we continue on with the agreement where I sell the cars and just take a commission. And he goes, fine. Now my partner's sitting across the way from me and he knows what I'm doing because I'm trying to buy the cars right. That's what I do. I'm a car dealer. I hand him the check. He looks at it and he goes, He folds it. I'm like, boom, puts it in his pocket. Shakes my hand. He goes, Joe, best of luck with everything. He goes, I'll talk to you after the auction. I said, great. I said, we'll go to lunch when I get back. I get to Scottsdale. Now, I appraised the cars at about $200,000, the package. I said between 180 and 210, which is about right. And I'll tell you what I paid for the cars. I'm not going to lie. I'm a straight up guy. I wrote him a check for $150,000. First car hits the block. It was the 1LE Camaro, 1990, 27 miles on it, light blue, in the wrapper, plastic on the seats, plastic on the floor, never PDI'd. $52,000. Hammer. Next car hits the block. The Corvette pace car. $60,000. Now we're at 110. Third car hits the block. SSR. $52,000. I got 3 more cars to go. That's all profit. My phone rings. It's Carl. I'm standing on the block. The SSR just went off the block. He's watching it live on TV. He calls me up. And I figured this guy's going to explode. My partner's standing next to me. I grab the phone. I go like this. He rolls his eyes. Hey, Carl, how you doing? Joe, you did great. I'm so happy for you. The guy was the nicest guy in the world. The next 3 cars go. They ring the bell. The dust settles. We get back to California. A couple days later, in comes Carl with a bag of food, cup of coffee. It was breakfast. He brings us breakfast. And he was like a little kid. Says to me in the end, he goes, I never should have doubted you. He goes, but I didn't think I should take advice from a car salesman on what my cars are worth. I was like, sometimes you got to listen to the other guy. And that's what happened. And it happens like that sometimes. And we stayed friends after that. And, he had a bunch of other cars. I ended up selling some other cars for him as time went on. But at the end of the day, sometimes a car salesman's advice can be pretty good. And sometimes you got to heed it. He had this envision in his head, well, what if the auction's bad and everything collapses and all the cars sell for a total of 40, 50? I'm like, they're not going to sell for $40,000, $50,000. It just doesn't work that way. I said, if you look at history and what some of these cars have sold for, even recently, you see what they're going to bring. A minimum, even if it tanks, I said, you're probably going to walk away with 150 or 175 grand. I said, but I think you're going to put 200 grand in your pocket at the end of the day. And he didn't have that in the cars because he had a connection with, I think, PPG or something like that. But he had a connection with a paint company. And he bought all these cars brand new from the manufacturers direct through his connection. And he paid invoice minus holdback. He got these cars cheap. So he didn't have 200 grand in the whole collection, I don't think, and he owned them for a while. And he moved a couple times and he'd have to move all these different cars. And it was just to the point where he just wanted to trim the herd and thin out his herd of car collections, as a lot of guys do. As time goes by, you realize, I got 40 cars that are a pain in the neck, dead batteries and servicing, and I don't drive them. Then I got to put tires on them. So let me cut it down to a more manageable amount. His nervousness was about the uncertainty of it because he's never done auctions before. So to people that have never done auctions, and to keep in mind, this is a no reserve auction. So they're going, whatever the hammer is, that's what these cars are bringing. And so that's where his uncertainty was. And I can tell he was kind of a, not a risk taker type of guy to begin with. Nicest guy in the world, love him to death, but he just wasn't that type of guy. So he was looking out for his well-being. But I remember he said to me, he goes, I should have took your advice. I said, sometimes car dealers don't have bad advice. When you go to a no reserve auction, you go to Barrett Jackson, everything's no reserve. They do have a threshold for some reserve cars, like $500,000 and above, they will put them on. But 99.9% of everything that hits across the block is a no reserve. Barely 1% is reserve. Actually, not even 1% is reserve, maybe a 0.5%. If you don't know what you're doing and you didn't buy the car right, you can get your clock cleaned. It happens. I've seen it happen to guys. And these are guys that they think they know the market. They think they know what's going on. Oh, yeah, I'm going to change the world. They bring the car, and I'm like, You know, and like, oh, I went backwards $22,000. I said, because you paid too much for the car. Some stuff you can bring, and I've had this happen with cars. You can bring a car, say, the car's going to do 40 grand. You know, good money. The car hammers at 90. What happened? You know, you get two guys on it at the end, and they're just pounding thousand, you know, hits on it, and that thing's going up. I've had that happen with cars, so you never know. There's uncertainty. When I do cars at auction, I send everything generally, depending if it's a good quality auction, and I go to good auctions. I like to send everything no reserve, a one-way trip. I don't want to transport it, pay entry fee, bring it there, not to sell it, then to haul it back home, pay those fees again. They're going. So I always try to send a package of cars. And a package of cars, you know, you're going to have winners, you're going to have some break-evens, you're going to have some that are going to go underwater and losers, but there's always going to be one or two that are going to be absolute grand slam home runs that you never accounted for. At the bottom line, it always pencils. It always pencils. It's a numbers game, and you know, and there's safety in numbers, and that's just how I do it. But you never know. There's always risks to be taken.
We'd like to thank this month's sponsor, the VINwiki YouTube channel, Minta Watches. We know the world of great cars and great watches tends to overlap a lot, and Minta specializes in remarkable timepieces, both vintage and modern, because they know that great watches also have great stories. So if you're looking for some entertaining and educational watch content, be sure to check out Adam's YouTube channel. And if you're in the market for a watch or you just want to learn more about watches, be sure to reach them at the link in the description below. They'll take great care of you.